In a treatise on human nature, Hume delves into the issues of the self and personal identity. So, in it, he challenged some fundamental assumptions when he applied this dilemma of persistence we've been talking about to the identity of the self. How does an identity persist, remember, in something like the ship of Theseus that's constantly undergoing changes? Likewise, how does the self persist, if at all? So, Hume rejects definitions of the self as something singular or fixed. He posits what's referred to as the bundle theory of identity. Hume described the self as a bundle or collection of different perceptions which succeed each other with inconceivable rapidity and are in perpetual flux and movement. That's the self. It's just this bundle of rapidly progressing perceptions constantly in flux and movement. That's a little bit chaotic sounding. So, fundamental to this concept of identity is constant change. This presents a serious obstacle to being able to confirm the existence of, let alone meaningfully define, a permanent, unchanging aspect of the self. And trying to identify some singular personal identity seems like it's going to be difficult. So, identity depends on the relation of ideas, he says. And these relations produce identity by means of that easy transition they occasion. So our identity is really based on the ease with which our ideas relate to one another and transition to one another. Hume says a problem arises when we project verbal tools like the self or identity and project that unified descriptive conception onto reality. A fiction or imaginary principle of union, as he calls it, arises when we take mere verbal devices like the word the self or identity and jump to the conclusion that the identity they're defining is unified actually in reality. It's not just this unified concept that we have verbally as a verbal device that, we're assuming that it actually reflects reality. And Hume says we shouldn't. Hume says the reality is that we have no just standard, no reliable standard, to justify a belief in a unified self or personal identity. He's fundamentally skeptical about the continuity of the self. Hume also expressed skepticism about our ability to clearly discern within ourselves the substance of the self or some coherent, enduring personal identity. So contrast this with Descartes, who argued that it's possible to know one's own mind. Recall that Descartes argued in the second meditation that our beliefs about the nature of our minds are more justifiable anyway than the beliefs that we form about material things, including our physical bodies. So keep in mind, he's just saying this, one is better than the other, but ultimately, at the end of the day, take this with a grain of salt because Descartes did have a lot of doubts about whether or not we could define the self in some holistic way rather than just be able to define certain essential properties of it. So our judgments about the nature of our minds, according to Descartes, are just more reliable than the kinds of epistemic justifications available to support beliefs about physical bodies and physical things.